Why is Canada suddenly shutting down the Northern Pacific Crest Trail border crossing? Is it just logistical or administrative reasons, or is it part of something bigger? Welcome back, y'all. My name is Jeffrey. We are diving into a hot topic today. Excuse me, I'm throwing this video together really haphazardly. I don't even know if things are presentable. But this news just came in and I wanted to talk about it immediately. Now, if you were a Pacific Crest Trail thru-hiker, you probably already know that reaching the Canadian border is one of the most iconic moments of the entire journey. But as of January 31st, 2025, Canada has officially shut down the Pacific Crest Trail permit program, meaning that hikers can no longer cross directly into Canada. Instead, they now have to either backtrack 30 miles to Harts Pass on the US side, or they have to go through an unofficial, the opposite. They have to go through an official point of entry, which is a huge logistical shift for anyone who's hiking this northbound. But here is where it gets interesting. This isn't just a minor rule change. With everything that's happening politically right now between the US and Canada, it's hard not to wonder, is this really just about logistics? Or, is there a bigger picture that we're just not aware of yet? And speaking of logistics, I have to tell you, my last week on trail was absolutely brutal. It was hands down the worst week on trail, but more on that in a minute. Now, before we dive in, if you love hiking content, if you are a thru-hiker and you want to stay updated on all things Pacific Crest Trail or thru-hiking or general outdoor adventure travel, hit that subscribe button and tap that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video or it pissed you off or any of the above. Okay, for those who don't know, the Pacific Crest Trail is a 2,650 mile long distance hiking route that stretches from the Mexican border in California, goes all the way through California, Oregon, and Washington to the Canadian border in British Columbia, Canada. The northern terminus is located at Monument 78, and it's just this remote spot in the middle of nowhere in the forest, and with a marker marking the U.S.-Canadian boundary. And now in the past, hikers who wanted to continue into Canada when they got to the terminus could apply for a special permit through the Canada Border Services Agency, the CBSA, which allowed them to legally enter the country without stopping at a normal checkpoint. If you're driving through those checkpoints or customs in the airport, it was a streamlined system that had been in place for years. And if you got approved ahead of time, which was fairly simple, we'll get into that, you can simply walk across the border and continue your journey into Canada to Manning Park. I can't remember the mileage. I think it's 7 miles, something like that, but much shorter than the 30-mile hike back into the US. So let me paint this picture for you at the northern terminus of the PCT. So you've been hiking for 5 months and you are finally reaching the terminus. And you get there and you have two options. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's not a road anywhere nearby. The closest road is, I think, 7 miles away north into Canada. It's called Manning Park. So you have that option if you've gotten your permit and done the proper process. Or your other option is to hike and stay on the US side, but you have to hike 30 miles back to Harts Pass. That is the next road access on the US side. So it's important to know that those are currently your two choices. I think people do a bit of both. I'd be interested to see the PCT survey this year to see. I don't know if that's one of the questions. I would guess it is. I'd love to see how many, but I would guess, if I had to conjecture, that it's about half and half. I think it's easier to go into Canada, but you do have to get the permit and stuff. And some people don't want to mess with that or forget to do it or don't do it in time. And so you can still go back into the US side. Additionally, if you're coming back to the US, then you have to pay the taxes on an international flight if you're coming from Vancouver. So all that to say, there's lots of considerations, and both are fine options, and different people choose them for different reasons. Now, before this change, hikers would simply apply for a special PCT entry permit through the CBSA. This process was pretty straightforward and simple. You simply emailed them your passport and a very brief form that you filled out. I was actually surprised. I expected a lot more paperwork, and it wasn't difficult at all. I would say it's a 15-minute 10, 20 minutes activity max, but you do have to do it. which is tricky because you're on trail, because there's a window. It's irrelevant. I was going to say, oh, I'll look it up, but it's irrelevant what the window was because it's no longer in place. But you had to do it, I think, within 3 months of your arrival or 2 months of your arrival, something like that. Don't quote me. But I actually applied for mine before I ever left for the PCT and got a really lovely Canadian style email from them just saying, hey, it's too early, but, just reapply when the time threshold arrives. So I did, and I got it in my email a few weeks before I finished the trail. It wasn't difficult at all. You did have to do it. So you did have to do it, and you had to do it from the trail, which now you could totally do it from a phone, but you did have to take 15 to 30 minutes to do it. So that's how the old process worked. And this allowed you to walk into Canada on foot.
Hello. Hey, if you are sitting there thinking, oh, I want to travel more, I want to go on more adventures, come with me. I host trips around the world. We've been hiking in Patagonia. We went looking for the Northern Lights in Iceland, trekking in Nepal, camping in Banff, Canada, in the Canadian Rockies. We do it all, and we have a real good time. Everyone's welcome, and all the details for any current trips, just click that little bubble up in the top corner, or go to my website, jjb.life/travel. And we almost always make at least one group cringy TikTok. So come hang out with us. We're a real good time.
I mentioned earlier that my last week on the PCT was absolutely miserable. Let me tell the story briefly. So I was sick. I knew that I was sick. I knew I didn't feel well, but I didn't really have time to like overthink it because we had to finish this trail. But it would turn out I probably had COVID. I felt better the last couple days, and when we got home, everyone in our family, I was the first one to get sick. Everyone in our family got sick. Like the next day, someone new would be sick, and then someone else, and it just like went through our whole family. And so by the end, I was feeling better, but other people were less far along in the journey, and one of them tested positive for COVID when they got home. So I don't know. I never tested positive. Can't guarantee it, but we were fairly isolated, so chances are good. On top of that, it was also raining nearly nonstop. It was raining every day, most evenings, and it was getting really bone-chillingly cold. We were dipping well below freezing. So I just felt like absolute garbage, but we still had, we had to finish. We were that close. We had to finish. But the real kicker is that hike back to Hart's Pass on the US side was hands down the worst night I had on trail. At some point, I'll make a video regaling you with the full story, but all that to say, it was just hands down the most miserable week of the trail. And then imagine, that this is going to become the new norm for northbound hikers. Granted, most of them probably won't have COVID at that point, hopefully. But that 30-mile backtrack just isn't fun. It's what every single hiker is going to have to do unless they opt for a formal border crossing going through I don't know where you could do that. There's a crossing north of Seattle, south of Vancouver. I don't know where the next one is, but you would have to get to one of those to properly cross into Canada. Now, most of us are Americans, and so a lot of us are going to be coming back into the US, and so it's not that big of a deal. But for Canadians, this is going to be logistically tricky for sure. But now with the PCT permit program shut down, hikers are only going to have two choices. They're either going to have to do the usual hike back to Hart's Pass and then go to an official border crossing from there, or I could understand why you cannot imagine the lack of motivation at this point. There is a little wind in your sails as you see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't think I know that a lot of people will just opt to end early so that it's easier to get to a official border crossing. I think those are the only two options now. And as I understand it, the closest border crossing is between Seattle and Vancouver. But that brings me to my final question, which is, why was this policy changed in the first place? Now, this is not unprecedented. During COVID, they shut this program down. No permits were issued. So there is precedence. We all survived when we couldn't go into Canada on the PCT during COVID. Now, there weren't very many people hiking the PCT during COVID, but there is precedence for this. So it is not crazy. We do know what will happen. Well, I don't know if it's crazy or not. That's a complicated question, but it is not unprecedented. That is what I meant to say. Now, the CBSA's official statement is super, super vague. And when you dig a little deeper, things start to get a little bit interesting. Now, of course, some people think that it's just about logistics. It's just an administrative choice, while others unsurprisingly suspect that bigger political shifts are much more at play. I don't know. So what do you think? Is this just a simple, innocuous, logistical admin change and there's nothing to see here? Or do you think that there's something a little more complicated causing it? Do you think that Canada should bring back the PCT entry permit, or does it kind of make sense for them to shut it down? I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your comments. Please keep them under control. My channels, we don't talk politics. We don't get too rowdy over here. So please be respectful. Please. And if you are planning to do a PCT through hike this year, make sure that you check out all my other videos on trail logistics, resupply strategies, and my vlogs. I vlog the whole thing. Oh, and gear recommendations, of course, that too. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, and if you hadn't already, click that thumbs up. It makes a big difference. All right, see you next time. Bye.
Want to watch another video? Click here. Want to learn more about my upcoming trips? Click here. Want to subscribe and like all my videos and turn those bell notifications on?